Welcome back to The Lead. The politics lead now. Senator Ted Cruz may be rubbing some of his fellow Republicans the wrong way here in Washington, D.C., but back in Texas, he's getting a hero's welcome.
We all knew that if we took on the Washington establishment, the establishment would fight back. And it's going to take time to change Washington, to turn this country around.
It's actually been happening all over the Lone Star State. On Saturday in San Antonio, Cruz was greeted with a standing O by the Texas Federation of Republican Women.
Having spent the past month up in D.C., it is really great to be back in America.
So what will this all mean for the party when Ted Cruz comes back to town? Let's bring in the political panel. CNN political commentator and Republican strategist Kevin Madden, president of the Center for American Progress, which, by the way, is celebrating its 10th anniversary this week. Happy birthday, Neera Tanden, and the editorial director for National Journal, Ron Fournier. So, Kevin, how worried is Republican leadership about Ted Cruz? He is getting bigger than ever out there in Texas.
Well,
where they grow things big.
He is. I think that the reason he's getting so much attention right now is that there are so many Republican-based voters who will reward the person or the movement that is most confrontational when it comes to confronting Obama and what they see as a march to the left. And, you know, if the Iowa caucuses were held right now, Ted Cruz would walk away with it. It wouldn't even be a contest. And I don't think that he, receptions like he got down in Texas, all that does is embolden him. And he's not, when they talk about this Republican establishment or the Washington establishment, he is thoroughly unconcerned with ingratiating himself with that, with those folks. And I think he's going to continue to do this throughout his term in Congress or his term in the Senate.
Ron, as a practical matter, can you run for president if you have alienated the entire establishment of your party?
You can run for president, you can build an email list, you can raise a lot of money, you can get great speaking fees. You can win a primary or two, and then you're going to lose, and you're going to join a long line of fringe candidates who make a career out of being a fringe candidate, and I think that's what Senator Cruz is heading towards.
Neera, are Democrats just licking their chops when they look at this infighting going on?
I think that Ted Cruz has been remarkably unhelpful to the Republican brand writ large. If you look at the last month, the tactic of shutting down the government over
Not
Obamacare.
in Texas, but nationally.
Not in Texas, but nationally. Yeah. I think if you look at independent voters and how they're looking at the Republican Party, the party has taken a huge hit. So I think the question going forward is, are people thinking about that general election down the road ever, or are they just thinking about the primary? If you're thinking about the primary, Ted Cruz seems to, he'll take Kevin's word at that he's a strong voice. But I think for a general election, he's obviously alienated and alienating to a lot of independent voters, which is the middle of the country.
Now, there are a lot of Democrats who are talking about the Tea Party and what damage it's wreaked upon the Republican Party. But take a look at this email that Congressman Alan Grayson, a Democrat of Florida, sent to supporters yesterday, comparing the Tea Party to the KKK. Here's the picture, pretty unforgivable. We reached out to Grayson. He defended the image given some of the racist attacks against President Obama. Ron, is this helpful to the Democratic Party, or is this ultimately something that hurts? Is this helpful to the? Well, who does this help? I'm
Nobody.
tongue-tied right now.
Whenever we sink this low in politics and draw that kind of analogy, it doesn't help anybody. It's just another example of the zero-sum game coarsening of politics. You can't condone that.
No,
I'm sure nobody here
it's
does.
outrageous, and it is an example that there is neither party has a monopoly on extremism and using coarse language inside the political debate.
I mean, I obviously think that is unnecessary and wrong, and he should apologize. But there's not an equivalence between one member of Congress and the entire Tea Party and the language and rhetoric it's used. Obviously, rhetoric like that on either side is wrong and should be stopped. But I don't think we should just say the parties are equal and they have equal extremists, et cetera. I think over the last month you've seen that the Republican Party has adopted an agenda, not as extreme as using anything like this, but an agenda to shut down the government over Obamacare is a pretty extreme agenda.
Nobody wins with this type of language, and it doesn't do one thing to motivate a persuadable voter out there. This is actually what keeps those voters who have yet to be persuaded to even participate in it. That's what makes them stay home, is language.
I'm not saying that it's equivalent to anything. It's just a high-profile Democratic congressman who says controversial things, and he's accusing the Tea Party of being racist. And it comes at a time when the Tea Party is certainly in the news a lot, and Democrats are certainly talking about them being extremist, and they're painting, the public sees them as extremists.
Let me be the first to say that, like that, his language is wrong, and he should say sorry for it. I think that that is wrong language, and that everyone in the political process should not condone language like this. It doesn't help anyone that people send out these emails and try to raise a lot of money by getting people angry instead of getting them more committed to the process.
And to Neera's point, the fringe part of the Republican Party right now, there's so many of them doing so many outrageous things. Get out of the way. Let them do that. Let them be the idiots. I don't know why a Democrat would want to get in the way of the Tea Party hurting the Republican Party.
So I want to play one bit of sound from Senator John McCain, who says he's seriously considering running for another term in 2016 when he will turn 80 years old. He talked about it with KFYI AM in Phoenix.
I'm seriously thinking about maybe giving another opportunity for you to vote for or against me in a few years from now. I'm seriously giving that a lot of thought.
Kevin, surprised at all?
Not at all. I think that when you've been in the Senate as long as John McCain has, and you've built as distinguished a career as he has, he still thinks that he has something to give to the process, particularly now where he feels like he can be somebody who can bridge a lot of these different factions on the Republican Party and the Democrats.
In many ways, we have the old John McCain back. He is somebody trying to broker.
But the question will be, can the old John McCain still get elected in Arizona?
Right.
And we should also point out, because Ron, I know you know Roberta McCain, his mother, who is clearly north of 100 years old. The McCains can live a very, very long time, one way or the other. Where do you see John McCain going if he continues to run and he's reelected in 2016 at age 80?
I'm not convinced he could get elected again. I do think he's got to worry about his right flank. Yeah, he can live a long time, but he might not get elected a long time.
You think John McCain could be defeated in a primary in Arizona?
Certainly. Oh, sure. We've seen very prominent, very able politicians get primaried, especially on the right.
He had to tack back to the right in the last election.
He sure did. Build the dang fence, I think.
And now he's back in the middle. Can he go right back again and still have any trust or credibility?
Right.
Ted Cruz is like basically attacking John McCain every day for the position he took in ending the government shutdown.
Neera Tanden, Kevin Bad.